Hello, everyone, and welcome to Whiteboard Wisdom Wednesday. My name is Sean. I am a mindset and inner alignment coach, helping people to follow their path. We got a really great segment today, and this is going to be super powerful. So if you take this in, I can promise you that this is going to have a profound effect on your life. We're going to be talking about liberation from emotional bondage. This, to me, is one of the most important things that we can be doing right now as humans. This is our edge of our evolution, right? Because so many of us have been in this place of reaction. We have traumas and experiences plugged into our nervous system, and then things from the outside world, stimuli occur and trigger those nervous system points, and we react in the same way. And often this shows up in relationships, especially with family and with partners and close friends. And I think it's very easy to see in our world right now that our triggers are getting louder and louder. Why? Because our consciousness wants us to evolve, okay? Humanity itself is desiring to evolve, and we can't do that unless we bring healing and awareness to these unconscious places within ourselves. These are the shadows, okay? We're looking at where these things happened, the story that came in, the beliefs that are there, and we're alchemizing it. Why? Because we deserve to live free. We didn't have this crazy journey to come here and be a slave to our emotions, okay? One of my favorite teachers, a guy named Jesus, real name Yeshua, one of the crux of his teachings was he was a master of not living life from his emotional body, okay? He was always walking on the water. That story in the Bible of Jesus walking on the water, yeah, that was him going above his emotions. He always stayed above the storm, the waves in the mind. When they get all crazy, when the triggers are going on, his awareness was above that. And he was inviting all of us to step into that place. And that's what we're being called to do right now, okay? It's not easy. And that's why it's an edge for most of us. That's why it's a huge part of our evolution. And I know it is for me because I've been getting initiated like you wouldn't believe with family, which is to me, the most difficult aspect of all of this. But yet that's where you're going to get the most mastery. And I just want to highlight this, okay? When you are desiring to go beyond a certain level of awareness and consciousness and gain a sense of mastery over yourself and your emotions, guess what's going to happen, okay? Not triggers. See how I put a line through that? That's not how I look at them anymore. They're not triggers that I have to go talk to a therapist about, okay? They are opportunities for alignment and evolution, okay? Now, this takes time to reconceive as the things are playing out in the now moment, to recognize, oh, it's an opportunity of alignment. Hold on, let me just... No, you bring the awareness in over time as these experiences go on, and then you will start to recontextualize it where you'll see it automatically as an opportunity to evolve. And you will get plenty of chances for this, let me promise you that, okay? So, let's talk about it for a second, okay? Now, when the trigger hits, what happens? Okay, something on the outside goes on, somebody says something happens, you get the feeling, okay? The feeling gets triggered in the nervous system, and guess who shows up to the party? That's right. The wounded ego. AKA the persona and the consciousness that you had when the thing first got plugged into your nervous system. Could have been when you were a child, adolescent, teenager. Whenever that experience occurred and you took on that belief in that moment and you went, and you didn't know how to deal with it, and you unconsciously reacted and developed a defensive pattern around it, that's what's still in here. Okay, so that shows up to the party, and everyone's like, oh no, it's the wounded ego, and he brought all of his party favors. Like it's like the cops showing up to a party, essentially. So normally when this happens, okay, wounded ego shows up, we go into a state of fight or flight. Naturally, the body does that. The defenses go up, we get the stress response going on. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, when you're in a state of fight or flight, it's not a time to open the heart. It's not a time to create. It's a time to survive, okay? So this survival paradigm has been what's been on our planet this whole time, okay? And now we are at such a unique point in space where on the human journey where life is saying, okay, time to go beyond that, time to for humanity to experience existence in a space of creation, which is innately what we're here to do. But with the evolution on a planet like this, we have to go through these cycles and these stages to get to this point, which we're finally at, which is really exciting and really incredible. But it's very challenging, okay? Because this can get very intense, all right? There's no mistaking why so many are being led to the rainforest to take plant medicines, and people are seeing emotional purges going on all over the place. I had a client of mine who, he just randomly started bawling his eyes out at work. Okay, these things are ready to be resolved, and we can't run away from them anymore, right? So, wounded ego shows up, we go into fight or flight, and then we engage in either defense or escapist behavior, right? So can you see why we find ourselves in the same loop, right? And we're like seeing the same things showing up again and again. It's because we're living from that reaction. And what's really going on here? I love this. This is like, really get this. This experience, this loop is showing up again to give us the opportunity to bring healing and awareness and consciousness to how this was created in the first place, where we didn't have that awareness and we just had that really intense reaction, and then we believed something about it. I'll give you an example of this. I lived most of my life from a place of insecurity, all right? When something would happen in my environment, someone, was acting out or someone was upset, I was like, oh, I did something. Like, it's my fault. There's something wrong with me to make that person feel that way. So I was operating from that story and belief of guilt. And in my own house recently, there was a situation where a family member behaved a certain way, and through observation, I was seeing the story come in, the trigger happened, and the story behind it was, I'm not welcomed in my own house, and that feels terrible, right? That was the wounded ego going into a place of victimhood, which is another thing we do, right? Defense, victim. Because we feel like a victim, we have to defend ourselves, right? So when you start noticing this, the story that comes in, the belief of me saying, I'm not welcomed in my own house, I can look at that right away and I can say, is that actually true? I'm believing in a story that is coming from the victim, right? The wounded ego came into the party and I identified with it. I said, that's me. That's how I'm feeling, and that's where I'm at. Instead of taking the road of Yeshua and saying, no, I'm going to walk above the waters on this. I'm going to observe what's going on, and I'm not going to get pulled down into that same story because I am here to live a life of freedom, okay? So that leads us into the next section, which is, okay, Sean, you're saying all these things. I get it. The trigger comes up. I go into the persona. All the thoughts and stories, beliefs and feelings show up with it. It's really intense, and I feel like I don't have power over it a lot of times. How do I free myself from this? Help me out, man. I got you. All right, so here is what I've been learning that has helped me so beautifully in these last few months, because it's been going on every day. I'm getting initiated big time with this, okay? And a lot of my clients are too, and we're working through this, okay? And we're allowing these emotions to come up and be experienced in a new way. So here's what you do. Before we get into that, I just want to highlight a point that is made by a man named Dr. Vernon Wolf, whose book Holodynamics is one of my favorites, okay? I'm a double Virgo. I collect a lot of information. I get very curious about everything. I do a lot of research, and I put a lot of different teachings together from a lot of different people, and I see what sticks and what makes sense to me. And one of the things that Dr. Vernon Wolf talks about is he's saying that there are lots of different layers and dimensions of reality, and that higher potentials are always trying to unfold into lower dimensions. So when we see what we think is a problem out there, or a trigger, or something that's not right, the problem is showing up and it's being driven by its solution in order for the solution to be made manifest. Okay, so we can look at that in the context of our own lives of, okay, what problems am I having? What issues and challenges are there? And what solution is trying to come in? And yes, that solution will come in if I can get beyond the reaction, if I can keep myself anchored in a state of creativity instead of a state of reactivity and survival. Because again, this is where we're evolving. We're going from survival to creation as a collective human race, all right? And we individually have to go through this process to then add that energy to the collective energies. That's how everything's going to transform, okay? So we all got an individual responsibility here, and it's all, for some it's a lot more difficult than others. Think about this, okay? We're clearing out a lot of shit. Not only from experiences and traumas in my early days of my life, okay? This is, for this body, okay, the lineage, the bloodline, all of the fears, all of the unresolved traumas and psyches and thought forms that were never alchemized and healed and dealt with by my ancestors that led to this body, all of that has traveled through the DNA to be here today. And now I'm the one that's saying, okay, I am ending and healing the patterns here. I am not giving these unconscious things to my offspring for them to have to deal with. No, I'm going to do that. I'm going to break that cycle, and it's going to be a bitch. I know it. I'm going through that, so I understand it, but I ultimately know that this is the greatest contribution that we can make to our planet. And this is how we live a life of freedom. This is how we get to enjoy ourselves in the present moment. So we're not just anchored back to all of our past shit. Okay? This is the process of all of that. All right? So what do we do? How do we liberate ourselves from the emotional bondage? Okay, here's what has been working really well for me, and I'm going to share it with you guys now. Okay, so when the wounded ego comes to the party, what's the first thing you do? You breathe and observe. Okay? Breathe and observe. Become the observer. See where the feeling is going on in the body. Be very present with it. Be very present and have your awareness and energy in your body, not up in your mind. If you see it automatically going up into the mind, breathe through that, because when this trauma happened, this trigger first formed, you didn't breathe, okay? You went, because it was so intense and you didn't know how to deal with it when you were a kid. So you breathe through it, you slow your breathing down, okay? And then you start to observe. What you'll see a lot of times is a flood of thoughts. All these thoughts coming in. I'm not good enough. It's my fault. It's this, whatever it is, or it's this person. You start blaming. Again, all the stories from the victim state of consciousness will come flooding into the now space in your mind, okay? But you stay present and aware, observe and breathe as that's happening. Step one, okay? Step two, which energetically is probably the most important one, is allow. Allow the feelings and the thoughts to be there. Make it okay. There's nothing wrong with them being there. You're allowing and giving space for the body to process it all out. because it didn't get a chance to do that before, right? Because you went into a state of resistance, defensiveness. And when you go into resistance and you're not accepting the reality that's happening in front of you, what happens? You take your magnetic field and you bring it out of coherence and into a place of disarray and chaos. And then your reality just reflects that back to you, aka the fun little loop that we get stuck on. Okay, so allow the feeling to be there. Give it a home, okay? Because you didn't give it a home at one point when you created that trigger in the first place, that belief. And as you're doing this, you are helping the body to feel safe, which is one of the key ingredients here. The body needs to feel safe. It's your inner child. That's what we're dealing with here. It's the little you that needs to be reparented, and it needs to be nurtured, and it needs to have a consciousness that's saying, hey, we're experiencing this in a new way. I'm going to let you feel what you need to feel, but know that you're safe through this. I got you. Okay? I went through a very intense experience recently where this person was being very violent, very explosive, in my face, spitting, all of these things, and I was feeling it all. Now, in the past, when that had happened, I got very defensive and usually engaged in violent behavior to throw that energy back at the person and say, like, how dare you give that to me? I take it back, in the form of physical altercation or verbal altercation, yelling. But this time I was experiencing it while the person was doing it, and I was letting my body know, you're good, man. I got you. I love you. And I'm just saying this within myself as I'm observing, as I'm allowing, as I'm breathing. Okay, all those start to come together through practice. This is really important, okay? Let the body know that it is safe. It's okay. Now, if it's not safe, if you're threatened with violence, of course, that's where the fight or flight actually serves you, but that's not most of the time, right? So breathe and observe. Allow the feelings to be there. Give it a home. Let it come back into wholeness. Don't resist it. Don't force it away. Don't push it away. Help the body to feel safe, okay? Number 3, compassion. Not only for yourself, but also for the person or the thing that's triggering you. Seeing the wounded child in them that got triggered, which is now trying to feed off, trying to get a response of some type of love in an incoherent way, and it's lashing out at you, and instead of letting it become this battle of two wounded egos and two traumatized inner children, you become the parent, you become the space for all of it, okay? You offer compassion to yourself, the child within you, but then also for the child within them. And you see that for what it is. Okay, now this all goes back again to the teachings of Yeshua. Okay, there's a reason that Ascended Master's name has been around and affected our planet so deeply, because these teachings, it's in our DNA. We resonate with it. Okay, there's a reason that all the churches and religions were built around this. Even though a lot of it got distorted, a lot of it had to do with emotional alchemy and using these different techniques. Now, I've been applying them for myself, and I set the intention. I was like, I don't want to live. I no longer desire to live from this place of insecurity. I no longer desire to continue this story that's been going on, and I'm seeing the same patterns again and again and again, and I'm not going to continue my life that way. And so life said, okay, I love that intention. Let me give you plenty of practice now so you can get over that. Because the things that we're calling in, no matter what they are, dreams, aspirations, ways of being, whatever, every time we call that in, all the resistance, all the things in our consciousness that are in the way of that manifesting will show up for us to deal with, for us to heal, for us to integrate with. Okay, so if you do these 3 things right here, you're going to be on your path to mastery and freedom within yourself, okay? And this is not easy. This is why it's really important to nurture yourself, to love on yourself, to give yourself what you need: proper sleep, nutrition, plenty of hydration, and don't forget to sing and to dance. Be a silly little goose. Like, this can get very serious, all right? It's really important to bring in a sense of lightheartedness as we're going through, again, the purging of a lot out of our DNA, not only from our own lives, but from all of our ancestors as well. And this is what we're being called to do to transform our planet. And when we do this, if you're a parent and you're doing this, this is going to translate to your children. And if you're someone like me who hasn't had children yet, but will in the future, I'm getting all of this stuff out again, so I don't hand it all to them and say, you deal with this now, okay? So for anyone who might be in this paradigm of thinking the world is getting darker, things are going to shit, and, doom and gloom, just know that we're in a period of the ceremony where we're healing. We're getting rid of the stuff and shining the light on what didn't have any awareness before, okay? So it seems chaotic, it seems dark, but actually this is a very integral part of how we're going to move forward. And this always paves the road to what I believe is a golden age that's coming in, a much higher consciousness that all of us are in together, not just certain individuals. And it all starts with here. 1, 2, 3, okay? So that's what I got for today. I hope you enjoyed Whiteboard Wisdom. This is a segment I'm going to be doing a lot more of, and I hope that you're able to implement some of the stuff and that it helps. It seems simple, but just really bring this forth and practice this in your everyday life. And what happens when we do the inner work, the outer reality changes. When we're changing the way we see things, things change. When we're changing the way that we see something, the thing we see changes. Just like Wayne Dyer says, okay? There's a lot of people that have a lot of wisdom that have been sharing this stuff over time, and this is really important to have this conversation, to get this out there, okay? You don't need to do this with a therapist constantly. You got to do this for yourself, all right? So sending lots of love to everyone out there. Thanks for tuning in if you did watch this, and I look forward to seeing you on the next Whiteboard Wisdom.